This is so exciting. Okay, it's preparing.
Hey, are we live? I assume we're...
I believe you're live, yes.
Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're able to see and hear me okay. And my very, very special guest, MGE's very special guest this year, Dr. Moshe Avital, who I will be introducing in just a moment. I want to thank each and every one of you who have joined us this evening and apologize. We just got to a last minute glitch technologically, but it appears that we are on and we are live. So welcome everyone and thank you for joining us this very, very special event on this incredibly important night of Yom Hashoah to commemorate the 6 million and the Holocaust. I want to thank each and every one of you who have joined us and appreciate you tuning in and joining us for this very important program. I hope that I can just want to make sure we're on, we're good. We're on, we're good. I need a little indication from somebody. Just text, just ask if we can. Just to make
I can
sure
hear
we're...
you.
Okay, good. Who is that? That is...
My name is Reva Hausman.
Was that it? So I want to thank everyone. Okay, Anita, welcome. Tonight's program is sponsored in memory of Harry and Terry Pniewski, a blessed memory, the grandparents of our dear friend and MG participant, Amanda Dreyer, who's a beloved part of the MG community. I want to give special thanks to my dear friends, Alan and Alicia Pines, who made this event possible, all in memory of Amanda's grandparents, Harry and Terry Pniewski, both of whom were Holocaust survivors. And may the program tonight that we experience serve as an aliyat neshama, as an elevation for the souls of all of the 6 million, and in particular, the Pniewski, Harry and Terry Pniewski, for whom this program is dedicated. Now, as many of you know, MGE's mission is to engage the 20s and 30s community of New York City and to engage them in Jewish life. And so by definition, we don't have anyone in our own community who, of course, themselves experienced the horrors of the Shoah. Our generation has thankfully been spared the pain that so many of our beloved grandparents were subject to. And since we didn't experience this event ourselves, we have to learn about it from others. And if we don't, then with a simple passage of time, the historical memory begins to fade. Now, you can read books, you can visit museums, but there's nothing compared to actually hearing from someone who was there, someone who witnessed personally and experienced the horrors of the Shoah. And so each year at MGE, rather than us simply speaking to you about this event, we feel that as long as we're blessed to have survivors with us, it's incumbent upon us to give them an audience so we can hear for ourselves from an eyewitness what transpired, what they actually went through, and how, of course, they survived. This year, we are privileged to hear from someone who not only survived the Shoah physically, but someone who went on to become a great Jewish leader, author, and scholar, and who has dedicated his entire life post the Shoah to sharing the beauty of Judaism with other people. As many of you have heard me say in the past, if we want to truly ensure the memory of the 6 million, then we have to do more than simply remember or commemorate. We must embrace the very life that our grandparents lived in Europe. Holocaust commemorations are imperative. And I commend you all for joining us here tonight. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Rachel Ben Lisa, who's operating all of the logistics here, Rabbi Ezra Cohn, the entire MG staff at Tara, who was very, very helpful in securing Dr. Avital initially, and the whole MGE community for being here tonight. And I thank you for being with us online. But to keep the memory of the 6 million alive, to truly keep the flame of Judaism burning strong, we have to do more than simply remember. We have to learn to actually appreciate and ultimately embrace the very Jewish heritage that our grandparents and our great-grandparents lived and so cherished. And that's really what MJE's mission is. So whether it's celebrating Shabbat, it's coming online for any of our amazing classes. We've tried during this period of Corona to be relevant and to still stay an important part of your life, and to learn how to read Hebrew, to travel to Israel with us, please God, soon. And that's how the memory of the 6 million will live on. It will live on through us, through our actions, and through the way that we live our lives as Jews today. And that's why our speaker tonight is so special to us at MJE, because as I say, Dr. Moshe Avital didn't only survive the Shoah, he went on to live and to write and to teach what it means to be a Jew. And there's another reason why Dr. Avital is so important for us to hear in this particular year on Yom HaShoah 2020. And that is because he's an incredibly, as you will hear, upbeat and positive person. And despite the hardships that he endured during his life, he lives his life with positivity, with gratitude, and with religious conviction. And I feel that his faith and his optimism can help all of us keep a perspective during the COVID virus, when so many of us are so socially isolated from each other and going through a lot of stress, to help us remain positive during this crisis. And so I want to thank Dr. Avital for being here for many reasons, and in particular this year. Here's the bio, and then we're going to bring Dr. Avital on. Rachel, you can bring Dr. Avital on now if you would like, but I'm going to continue. Oh, I don't actually see him. Okay, that's fine. Dr. Moshe was only a teenager when his town in Czechoslovakia was taken over, and his family was eventually forced into the ghetto and then taken to the unimaginable. And he somehow withstood the horrors of 6 concentration camps, including Auschwitz and Buchenwald. And he somehow survived the death march. Death march, only 400 out of 10,000 people survived. And tonight we're going to hear a detailed account of what it was like during the Holocaust and the faith, the spiritual faith that it took to survive until Dr. Avital was liberated in April 16th, 1945. After he recovered from the war, Dr. Moshe Avital joined the Haganah, and he fought in Israel's war of liberation, Milchemet HaShichrur, from 1947 to 1950. He also fought in the 1956 Sinai campaign with the IDF, and then came to the United States to pursue his advanced studies. And he earned a bachelor's and master's degree in education, and ultimately a PhD in Hebrew literature from Yeshiva University. For 50 years now, Dr. Avital has served in many different educational positions in the United States. He speaks 6 languages and has also served and continues to serve as a translator. And most importantly, he's married to an awesome woman, Anita, who I want to thank, his wife of many, many years, for helping set this up and for being such a wonderful support. And I want to welcome her to our program. And together, Moshe and Anita have 3 daughters, 11 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, as we say in French, bli ayin hara. Dr. Avital is a well-known author and speaker on the Holocaust, and he presents testimony both as a survivor and a Jewish educator, bringing to light many unknown facts of the Holocaust era. And he provides a unique psychological, philosophical, and theological perspective on the Shoah, as well as reflections regarding the Nazis, the perpetrators themselves. Dr. Avital has published 17 books, which can all be found on his website, www.mosheavital.com, Moshe, MosheAvital.com. The most recent of which is entitled Hope, Faith, Resilience, What the Germans Couldn't Take From Us. And there's another book that hasn't been published yet. It's about to be published. It's literally in the publishing house. Can There Be Forgiveness for the Holocaust? And our discussion yesterday, when we were reviewing what we were going to try to share and the questions I was going to pose Dr. Avital, he shared with me that someone in the camps once said to him that what he most feared was that if the Nazis were somehow successful in destroying everyone in that camp, his friend asked him, Moshe, how will anyone ever know what happened to us? And Moshe told me that at that moment, he took a vow. He made what's called in Hebrew a neder, a vow to God. And he said that if I survive, I will spend the rest of my life sharing what I saw. And I want to thank you, Dr. Avital, for coming tonight and keeping your promise to your friend and keeping alive the memory of the 6 million by serving as a witness, and not only as a witness, but a person of great faith and optimism that we could all use at this time in our own lives. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Moshe Avital, it's an honor and pleasure. Okay, I can't hear anything, but I'm going to start to speak. Okay, Dr. Avital, thank you for joining us tonight and sharing what you witnessed. Let's start from the very beginning. Can you hear? Can you tell us a little about your life before the war, where you grew up, what your family life was like?
I come from a shtetl, a town called Bilke in eastern Czechoslovakia. The town had 10,000 population, 2,000 of them were Jews. My father was the cantor and shochet of the town. We were 11 brothers and sisters. I was the youngest. And I had a real intensive Jewish and general education. It was a different kind of approach than in America. When I was 3.5 years old, I started to go to Cheder. And by the age of 4, I knew already how to read Hebrew, the Siddur and other Hebrew books. And when I was 6 years old, I entered the Czech public school because every student had to go to the public school. Otherwise, the parents would go to jail. In our area, in the Carpathians, the population was mostly Ukrainian or Ruthenian, as they call them. And they spoke the Ruthenian language. So they had an autonomy for culture, and they had their own public school. But all the Jews went to the Czech public school until the Hungarians occupied our town, when the Czech public school was eliminated. So we went to the Ukrainian public school. Mm-hmm. But the change was immediately noticed because some of the young people were anti-Semites. Mm-hmm. I was sitting in the bench with my friend Moshe, and I had payas, and before I went to school, I used to put them behind my ears. And we were sitting on the bench in the middle of the lesson. The two boys behind us started to pull our payas. And I didn't like that. Then we went out for recess. Moshe Brown and I beat up those boys that did it to us. And they were crying, and they ran to the teacher and told them what happened. The teacher called us and put us in front of the class and scolded us, and they said that they are calling our parents. My father was called. He came to the school, and without asking any questions of me, he gave me 2 smacks in my face. And I was astonished. When I came home, I was crying terribly. And I said to my father, Allah Shalom, I was trying to defend the Jewish honor, and you come and you hit me in front of the Goyim. And he said, what can we do? We are in Golus. We have to try to pass this period of time. And he was trying to explain to me why he did it. For a month, I didn't go to the school until my father got a letter saying that if I don't show up in school, he'll go to jail. So I had to go back. But it didn't last long because soon after that, all the Jewish children were expelled from the Eurotanian public school.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. In 1941, when your country, Moshe, was then divided into those three territories that we spoke about before, the German, Slovakian, and Hungarian, is that when you started feeling, I mean, you had that experience in school. When did you start experiencing anti-Semitism throughout the area where you were living?
All along, there was anti-Semitism, not on the surface. When we used to come home in the evening from the cheder, the Gentile boys threw stones at us, and they yelled in Ruthenian, Jede de Palestine, meaning Jews, go to Palestine. And now the Arabs say that the Jews should go back to Europe. That's the irony of it.
And then what happened when the Hungarians took over then?
The Hungarians came in 1939, and they decreed all kinds of decrees. Jews were not allowed to have properties, no business, and professionals were not allowed to practice their professions. And all males 18 to 50 were mobilized to the labor battalions, which the Hungarians called Munkotabor, and 100,000 Jewish men from the Carpathians, Transylvania, and parts of Yugoslavia, which were occupied by the Hungarians, were sent to the Ukraine to help the Germans build fortifications and airfields and roads. And they suffered a great deal. Many of them died there and perished in these camps. Two of my brothers, unfortunately, were among the victims. So the Hungarians were very terrible people. They were fascists, and they did a lot of harm to the Jewish people.
And what was it like for you, just as a child during this period of time, in terms of getting food and just living day to day at this time?
Everything was rationed, and if the family had certain coupons that you had to go, let's say, to the bakery to get the bread, but not always did they have the bread. So sometimes you had to get up 4 o'clock in the morning and go to the bakery and wait until this bread is baked and give it to you. And many times the bread was like mud. It wasn't finished before they gave it out.
Wow. Now, we're going to fast forward just a little. In 1944, you mentioned to me you were 14, and you and your family were then expelled from your hometown in Czechoslovakia to this ghetto. I don't want to mispronounce the name of the ghetto, but it starts with a B, B-E-R?
Texas.
Okay. Can you describe your experience there to us?
Yeah. In 1944, the last day of Pesach, the Hungarians announced that the next day we are going to leave for a ghetto, and that we can take only 5 pounds for each person. So that night on Motzei Achag, we were packing feverishly important things, such as pictures, documents, and religious items like talit and tefillin, and also a little bit of food, durable food. And the next morning, 2 Hungarian policemen with soldiers showed up at each house, and they sealed the house with all your belongings, and they told us to go to the yard of the synagogue. And when we got to the yard of the synagogue, the entire community was there, and the Hungarians surrounded the place with bayonets, and they called out family by family, and we had to line up. And then the march started to the train station. This march was very difficult because the males, the able-bodied, were in the Ukraine. So we had to help each other whatever we could. Then we arrived finally, after hours, to the train station. There was there a train with boxcars, and the Hungarian police with their helpers pushed us into the wagons, 100 people into a wagon. And they closed the doors, and the train started to move and went to the ghetto. In Czech, it was called Berehovo, and in Hungarian, Beregszáz. This used to be a brick factory. There were no walls, no doors, no windows, just the roof and a few supporting columns. And we had to sleep on the floor, and it was very crowded because there was only that much room in each of these structures. The ghetto management gave out once a day some soup, but there was a question whether it was kosher or not, and there were many people that didn't want to eat it because of that. The women had a hard time to prepare some food for the families. So we went outside into the field, we put together a few stones and brought some branches and wood and lit a fire, and the women were cooking whatever they could scrape together. When we left, we took with us the matzah from Pesach. We still had matzahs. And my mother was a very good cook, and she made all kinds of good goodies from these matzahs.
I mean, you remember, if you can tell us a little what you were feeling. You had the matzahs from your mother and her home-cooked meals, but all of this craziness was going on. You were just a kid. What were you feeling like?
Well, I was very angry. I didn't know what will happen because we heard all kinds of rumors. And I was hoping that this nightmare will end very soon. And of course, we were always thinking about our brothers who were in the Ukraine. We didn't know what happened to them. And after 2 months, we were told that we are going to be moved to a more secure place because the Russian army is coming closer, which was a lie. And they told us to deliver all the valuables to the authorities. So they put big baskets in front of each structure, and the people had to throw in the money or any valuables that they had. And I read in the paper that until this day, the Hungarians have all this gold and silver, all the valuables in their treasury, which is supposed to cover for their money.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Can you tell us a little about then when the ghetto was liquidated and you left and what that was like and your next step, I guess, to the concentration camps?
3 days before Shavuot, we were taken again to the boxcars and put in 100 people, and also 2 containers on each boxcar, one with water and one for human waste. And the doors closed and the train was moving. We didn't know where they are taking us. And every boxcar has on top near the roof a little opening, and it's secured with barbed wire. And the people that were standing near it, although it was very high, they stood on the shoulders of somebody and they looked out whenever the train stopped, the name of the station. So they saw a name, Košice. Košice was on the border between Ruthenia and Slovakia. And the train continued. Then it stopped and the doors opened up and 2 high-ranking officers, one Hungarian and one SS, with a loudspeaker, they announced, from this moment on, you are under the command of the German army. And the doors closed and the train continued. And 2 days later, they see the people that were standing nearby, the name of another station, Krakow. So we knew already that we are in Poland. And the train was going and stopping, going and stopping. People were dying in the boxcar from hunger and from thirst, and also from the we were like sardines together, and it was a terrible scene until we reached the 5th day. And on the 5th day, they looked out again and they saw a station, and they didn't know where we ended up because they never heard the name. And they asked around in the boxcar, did you ever hear the name Auschwitz? I mean, nobody heard. So that's where we arrived. And soon after that, the doors opened up and all hell broke loose. The SS with ferocious dogs were chasing out the people from the boxcars. And there was a big problem because the boxcars were very high and there were no steps to go up. So the elderly and the children had a tough time to get off the train. And they were yelling, raus, raus, out, out, schnell, schnell, fast, and beating up those that didn't go fast. And they told everybody that women and children should line up in one column and men in another column. And that was the last time that I saw my mother, Aleha Shalom, and 5 sisters and 6 of their children. 2 of them were married already. And my brother Yosef, who was 2.5 years older than I, was with me and my father. And everybody had to stand in front of this officer. At that time, I didn't know who this officer is, but then I found out. And when I stood in front of Mengele, I was 14 and something old. And he asked me how old I am. I told him that I'm 16. And for a moment, he hesitated. And he sent me to the right where my brother Yosef he sent. My father is sent to the left. But that day, we didn't know what it meant, left or right.
How did you know, Moshe, to lie about your age, to make yourself appear older?
There was a unit in Auschwitz, prisoners who have been there for a while. It was called the Canada Unit. They appeared every time a transport came, they appeared on the platform, and they were going around to collect the bundles because we were told to leave our luggage on the platform. And at the time when they picked up the luggage, they also were telling quietly all kinds of things to the people. If they saw a mother that had a little boy or a girl, and her mother was with her, they used to tell them, give the child to your mother and save yourself. And so they told me to say that I am older.
Oh, wow.
And when I was sent to my brother, I was very happy because at least I was with him. And they took us into a huge barrack. In the first room, they told us to get undressed.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry, Moshe. So that
Yeah.
was, you're with your brother Yosef? You're with your brother Yosef,
Yes.
and no one else from your family at this point?
no, we were alone now. Just
All your sisters, your father?
No, my sisters and my mother and the six Enoch were together with them. I didn't know what happened to them. And my father was sent to the left, and I didn't know what happened to him. So we, in this structure, they told us to get undressed and put all our clothing and shoes on piles. Then they took us into the next room, and there were prisoners, barbers, and they were shaving us from head to toe. And then they took us into the next room. There was a huge swimming pool with some dirty water, we thought. It was disinfectant, and it had a terrible odor. And after that, they took us to the next room. We showered. And finally, we got to a room where they gave out the uniforms. There was the prisoners were standing in front of tables, and they had the uniforms. They didn't ask you what is your size. They just threw at you a uniform. At me, they threw a huge uniform that was falling off me. I couldn't wear it. I was lucky that near me was a tall, husky fellow whom they threw a small size, and we exchanged. And that's how I was able to do it. And after that, they marched us into Auschwitz. We passed the sign, Arbeit macht frei, Arbeit, work is liberty. And they took us to a barrack, 1,000 prisoners into this barrack. And on both sides of the walls, there were shelves built, 3 stories high. These were our beds. There were no mattresses, no blankets, no pillows, no sheets, nothing. We had to lie on the plain wood. And
Were you in the same barrack with your brother, with Yosef?
yes, we always tried to be together. And then appeared a high-ranking SS officer, and he made a pep speech. And he said, "This is Auschwitz. You should know, don't forget, this is a concentration camp, not a recuperation place. Arbeit macht frei. You must work. If you don't work, you'll go straight to the furnace. The choice is yours. Arbeit or the furnace, and he left. If we weren't scared by now, you can imagine how we felt.
How did you process all this? I mean,
It came so fast, everything. That was their secret. Everything was done on the double. Everything was done very fast, and you didn't have time to think even. That's how much the pressure was.
and you were able to stay with Yosef? You were able to remain
I
with him?
stayed with Yosef. We slept on the same section with on the shelf. And the next morning, we went out to work on a construction site, and we worked for 12 hours, and we came back. Now, the food that they gave out consisted of 700 calories. And in the morning, they gave for every 5 prisoners, because they told us always to line up 5 in a row. To every 5 prisoners, they gave a bowl of black coffee, which was dirty water. And the first one drank, then he passed it on to the second and the third, and so on. However, when it came to the 3rd or 4th prisoner, there was nothing left already, because everybody was so hungry and they were trying to drink. And there were fights, and the Germans did it purposely in order to make bad blood between the prisoners. And on the construction site, we stopped for a half hour, and they gave us lunch, supposedly. The lunch consisted of a very small bowl with soup, which was mostly water. If once in a while you could find a piece of carrot or cauliflower or any other vegetable, that was a big feast. And we went back to work. And in the evening, after 12 hours, we returned to the camp. And at the gate, there was roll call again. They counted us if everybody is back. When we came to the bunk, to the barrack, they gave a piece of bread, jam, or margarine. That was the supper. Now, the bread that they gave us was a slice, and that the flour was mixed with sawdust. Can you imagine what kind of a bread that was? And even that, if they would have given us a larger piece, at least your stomach would have been filled. Now, there was, the prisoners developed 3 different philosophies of how to eat this bread, because this was the most precious commodity in the camp. Some took a crumb and they hid the last one in your bosom. Some cut it into 3 pieces, one for breakfast, one for lunch, one for supper. And some ate it at once. Why? Because they were prisoners who were attacking you and taking from you the bread. I always ate it right away, because what was sure is sure. And the problem was also at night. You were sleeping on these beds, and people were making, they were urinating and all kinds of things. It was a terrible thing.
And you were there, you mentioned to me, for 2 months.
Yeah.
And then you were sent to another camp then?
We were sent, my brother Yosef and I were sent to Ploshov. That's the camp where Schindler's List was made. That was the camp where he had this factory. And when we came to Ploshov, on the roll call, like it looked like a parking lot. There were SS men behind tables, and each one of us had to walk over to him. And he asked, "Was ist dein Beruf? What is your profession?" I didn't have a profession. I said, "I'm a student." So he wrote down for me hard labor. My brother learned at home from my sister how to sew on a sewing machine. So he said that he is a tailor because he heard from somebody right near, he was standing there, that in Plaszow, there are tailor shops where they make the German uniforms. Mm-hmm. So he became a tailor, and he had it easier because it was inside. He had no problem with the weather or anything. I was marching out every morning for 8 kilometers from the camp to the train station of Krakow. And there we had to load and unload German equipment that was sent to the Russian front. And this went on for 4 months. We always made sure that we line up on the same row of 5 because we heard that families sometimes is separated. In the middle of the night, we are waken up by the capos, and they were beating us to get out and line up. And in the confusion, we did not line up in the same row of 5. Yosef was just a couple of rows away from me. An SS officer came and he started to count from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, until he came to my row. He said, "Above face," and they took us to the train station, and that was the last time I saw him.
You were, so you were there at Plaszow for 4 months.
Yeah.
And that was the last time you saw your brother.
Yeah. But I found out later what happened.
How did you handle that when you were sent to another camp?
I was
Bolkenheim, I think you mentioned.
That was a terrible camp. I was sent to that camp, and I was alone now. It was terrible. You didn't know where everybody is. I was trying to find out what happened to him for months and months, until after I came to Buchenwald, I saw a landsman from our town, a boy that was with us in Plaszow. And he came later from Plaszow to Buchenwald. And I said to him, "Mendy, do you know what happened to my brother Yosef?" He said, "Yes, unfortunately, in December of 1944, he entered the infirmary and he never came out." Now, usually in a civilized world, people, if they are sick, they go to an infirmary and they are treated. There, if you went into the infirmary, it was dead for sure. They injected in their heart gasoline and they killed them right away as soon as they came to the infirmary. And that's what they did to my brother.
We're getting closer to the end of the war now, and you mentioned that you were in Plaszow until January 1945, and the Nazis were telling you that they had to move deeper into Germany because the Russians were coming. And that's, I think, when the death march began, because now They were just trying to move you around, get you out of the camps because they were running from the Russians at this point. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah. This was from Camp Bolkenheim. After Prashov, I was sent to Bolkenheim,
Right.
where I worked in an airplane factory. In January of 1945, an order was given to clear out Camp Bolkenheim, that the Russians are coming. This time it was true, because we heard the artillery duel between the Russians and the Germans. And it was early in the morning. It was 20 below zero. It was bitter cold. And also, you have to know that the striped pajamas like that we wore these in the summer and the winter all the time. We had nothing warm to put on. Sometimes a prisoner found a rag someplace and he put it under the uniform. If you were caught, you got 25 lashes. Or sometimes they used cement bags, because on the construction site, when we used cement, the bags were empty and these were big bags. So we were putting around our body and put on top of it the uniform. So if anybody was caught, they were very angry about it. They were very, very much afraid of lice and of typhoid. Now we had every month, once a month, we had what they called Entlosung. It means that they took us into this barrack. They told us to get undressed, and they took the uniforms and they put them in big dryers, and we were waiting naked until this thing was finished. Sometimes it took hours, and we were freezing. But it killed the lice, but it didn't kill the eggs. So every month it came back. It was a terrible thing. People were constantly removing lice.
And then as we get a little closer to the end of the war, you somehow survived this death march, which I think you mentioned. I mean, in the freezing cold and just endless walking, 400 out of 10,000. How did you survive that? How did you manage to stay alive?
You know, there's a saying in Yiddish, a Mensch ist stärker von Eisen und schwacher von a Flieg, which means a human being is stronger than iron, but weaker than a fly. There were times that I felt very strong in spirit, but very weak in my body. So I had this drive to survive. I wanted to survive. I figured there's nobody left of the family. So I had this drive, constantly thinking about that I must survive. And I ate snow because they didn't give us food. At night, they used to put us into barns and schools in the German villages, and the SS were guarding around. And during the day, we marched. We didn't march during the night because they were afraid that somebody might run away. And sometimes I even tried to help the stragglers, the weaker ones, when they walked very slowly and the guards were yelling at them. and the guards pushed them aside and shot them and threw them to the side. Thousands and thousands of Jews were killed that way. Now the Germans developed this Death March program for two reasons. They didn't have any more trains because the Allies bombed a lot of the trains. And also the Germans needed it for their army for the retreat. So they took the prisoners and they took them on this Death March.
Did you ever, while you were marching, and these SS officers, I mean, this went on for hours and hours every day. Did you have any, was there any conversation, any dialogue with them? You were quiet, you spoke to the other people?
Yeah, I want to tell you what happened with one of them. There was one of the guards that he took his backpack and gave it to a prisoner to carry it for him. And this prisoner, after a while, opened it up and he saw that there is food in it. He ate as much as he could and gave to the people around him and threw away the bag. After a while, the SS man was looking for the prisoner, but he couldn't find them because everybody looked alike. We had the same uniforms. We were emaciated. The snow covered us. So he looked and he looked and he asked around and nobody knew. Now this was our dilemma. Many times we didn't know what to do. If to squeal on somebody, if he did something wrong in order to save other people, or not to do anything that has to do with the Germans. So nobody told anything. The soldier went over to the commandant, the one who led the column, and told them what happened. And the commandant announced that whoever took the backpack, come forward. Nobody moved. And again, the same thing. Finally, he says, if the one who took it doesn't come forward, every 10th prisoner will be shot. And the 2 minutes passed, and they went and they started to take out every 10th prisoner. They lined them up, and just before they were going to shoot them, a prisoner came forward and said, I was the one who did it. Now, we never knew whether it was the real prisoner or it was a Jewish man that volunteered to sacrifice himself in order to save so many Jews. So these were the dilemmas that we had. So the march went on, and we finally arrived in Buchenwald in the middle of the night. 400 of us. We were completely so tired, you have no idea. Some SS men from Buchenwald came. They looked at us. We were a few teenagers. So they took us into the children's barrack 66, where Elie Wiesel and Rabbi Lau and a few others were there. So that's where I ended up, in the children's barrack.
And tell us a little then about the story of your liberation. And I also, afterwards, we really want to make sure if you can share with us how you maintained your Emunah, your faith in Hashem, and was able to maintain whatever religious traditions you were able to maintain in those years.
Okay. On April 7th, 1945, the commandant in Buchenwald received an order to eliminate all the prisoners and destroyed the installations. And we found out later from the Americans that they intercepted a train with Hitler Youth that were sent to Buchenwald in order to help the SS to eliminate everybody. So, but the Americans caught them and took them to prison. And we didn't know what was happening. We only heard rumors that the Americans are nearby. And they started to take barrack by barrack into the forest. And in the forest, there were trucks with machine guns and SS. As the group arrived, they shot everybody. This went on for 4 days. When our turn came now, we were also taken from our barrack, and we were walking very slowly. I couldn't walk anymore. I was dragging my feet, coming closer to the gate. And just before we reached the gate, the sirens started to wail as if they were crying. And the SS closed the gate and they ran for cover. Soon after that, American airplanes came and started to bomb all the SS installations outside the camp. And this went on for hours until midnight that day.
Where were you? What did you do when the Nazis were taking cover from the barrage? Where did you go?
Our chief of the barrack, who came from Czechoslovakia, who was not Jewish, was a wonderful man. He told us to run back to the barrack, but I couldn't run. I was crawling on my stomach until I reached my barrack. And we were there, and we didn't know what was happening until the morning. When the morning came, we saw that a few prisoners were running to the flagpole and pulled up a white flag. After that, 3 American tanks of the 6th Armed Division broke through the gate, and also a Jeep. And in that Jeep was Rabbi Herschel Schachter from Yeshiva University. He was a chaplain. And he came into our barrack, into the children's barrack, and said in Yiddish, Yiddische Kinder, ihr seid frei. Jewish children, you are free. And that's how we were liberated. What? Yeah, well, when all this went on in the last minute, when the Americans were bombing and all that, I remembered the prayer that Shimshon said when he did with the Plishtim. Chaskenina v'amsenina achapam. I said that prayer. Well, he helped me.
There's a lot of similarities between you and Shimshon, Moshe, both true heroes of the Jewish people. So you're liberated now. Can you tell us a little, was there ever a time during all of this craziness you were actually able to maintain your Judaism, to practice Judaism, celebrate any Jewish holidays or anything? How did you survive spiritually?
I'll tell you, I come from a religious home, and I was brought up, they implanted in me that a day will come and the Jewish people will be liberated, and that the Geulah will come, and the Jewish people will return to the land of Israel, and so on. And I believed in that, and I was waiting for that moment. Now, I can tell you this, that there were times that I had I jotted down today a couple of things about Emunah.
Those of you listening, Emunah means faith,
Yeah,
belief.
actually, we can learn a great deal about Emunah from Yosef, Jacob's son, that he was sold to Egypt and he did not give up his religion and his Judaism. He was the one who kept it under very difficult circumstances. We are a nation that possesses great DNA. It's in our DNA. And I felt all the time that no matter what, I would not give up my Judaism. And also our patriarchs and matriarchs, they created for us a path which enabled us to overcome the tremendous challenges and tests. We know that Abraham Avinu went through Asara Nisyonot, Nasa Abraham Avinu. He was tested 10 times. It was a test. It was testing us what we will do. Now you asked me if any observances took place. It was very difficult because they were looking for people that were trying to celebrate any holiday or anything like that. I read by Primo Levi. When he arrived in Auschwitz, he was wondering what he is doing there. He thought he is an Italian. And then he saw in the corner of one of the barracks, there was a group of Jews who were standing and davening. So he was very envying them because they had something to hold on to. I also had something to hold on to my heritage, to God, to Eretz Israel. There were certain things that I knew that it's going to change. It's just a matter of having the strength and the patience.
Incredible. And did you feel also, Moshe, like there was just so many times when, you know, it's just so difficult sometimes for us to understand how some people make it and some people unfortunately didn't. Do you feel as though, I mean, you know, you're not a prophet, as great of a man as you are, so I don't know if you can give a definitive answer, but do you feel somehow that Hashem, that God was somehow watching over you and he wanted you to continue somehow?
Definitely. Let me tell you, I was many times on the verge of that, many times. And each time, just before that, I felt like a hand was leading me. I felt it. So.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And did that somehow inspire you to, I mean, upon, you know, liberation, was there something else you wanted to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to say this, that you asked me before if there were observances. Mm-hmm. In Buchenwald during Hanukkah, we wanted to light candles, but we didn't have candles. So what did they do? They took out thread from their clothing and they made a wig, and they put it into, they took margarine and melted it so that would serve as oil. And that's how we were able to light the candles.
Unbelievable. And you mentioned to me something about about a day of the week? Did you know when, like, it was a regular day or Shabbos? When
Yes. There were some people that kept a calendar. They were hiding it. They made it up themselves in order for us to know when Shabbat is and when the holidays come out and so on. But it's interesting that the Germans knew exactly when there is a Jewish holiday. And on those days, they were more ferocious than any other days. So we knew already that if something happens, let's say before Pesach, we knew that Pesach is coming because they are the ones who are doing to us a lot of harm.
it's unbelievable. I'm wondering, just one or two things left, if it's okay. Thank you so much for spending all this time with us. I can't tell you how inspirational it is for all of us to hear you speak the way you do. Many in the Jewish community have been affected in the world, obviously, by what's happening by the COVID, by coronavirus. I mean, any advice, any wisdom? MJE is an organization, as you know, which is committed to engaging young 20s and 30s. A lot of people are alone. Unfortunately, a lot of older people have passed away as well. Anything you can share about that briefly?
Well, a person has to be strong and try to overcome this by not giving in. He has to be strong, and he has to realize that God doesn't want anybody to die just like that. That this is a plague that was brought upon us, which will go away. But in the meantime, we have to be careful what we do, and in order to prevent from getting involved.
Thank you. Now, you said something about your family, something to the effect of how your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren are the greatest revenge against the Nazis. Tell us a little about that and the nachat you've had from your family.
Yeah, well, we have 3 daughters, Baruch Hashem, wonderful daughters, and they have 11 grandchildren. One more beautiful and more talented than the other. And then we have 2 great-grandchildren which were born just a year ago. And when the 2 great-grandchildren were born, I said that one of them, to me, is Nechama, my comfort, and the other one is Nikama, my revenge. And so is all the children of the Jews that were born after the Holocaust. And I say that every Jewish child after the Holocaust is very precious, and that we have to try to bring them up according to our traditions, and that there should be a continuation of our faith and our belief and so on.
And you, yeah, please.
Now, a couple of years ago, one of my granddaughters got married, and
Awesome.
I was standing and talking to somebody, and they came over to me. They said, Saba, come, we need you. They took me on the dancing floor. They took a chair and they set me down on the chair in the middle. And all 11 grandchildren marched in around me, and they had on T-shirts which said, Yaldei Hanisim, the miracle children. And also on the other side, on their back, was written who won, which one was the first, second, and third, and so on. And that was a scene to see. That, and I said to myself, here is my Nikama on Hitler, that he wanted to destroy the Jewish people, but he can't, and he will never be able to.
I wonder if you think about, thank you so much for sharing that. I wonder, if you think about that at the Seder, we just finished Passover, and we say in the Haggadah, B'chol dor v'dor omdim aleinu l'chalotenu, that in every generation, our enemies rise up against us to strike us down. I just wonder what that's like, what you think about when you get to that passage in the Haggadah.
Yeah, I also say that it says that everyone has to see himself as if hu yatzah miMitzrayim. And I
as
say
though we ourselves left Egypt.
That every Jew has to look at himself as if he, it's right there.
This one? Here, yeah. Show it here.
I wanted to show you something.
Okay, sure.
A year and a half ago, I had my 90th birthday. And usually, you make a party, you have cake, this, that. My family surprised me with something which will last forever. They made up a Haggadah that says Haggadah Shel Moshe.
Oh, but wait, can you lift that up a little further? A little higher, just higher up? Oh my God, Haggadah LeMoshe. Oh, that is gorgeous.
Now, what did they do? It's in Hebrew and in English. They took the regular Haggadah, and each one of the family picked out a pasuk, and they gave an interpretation, Advar Torah. So it's amazing what they.
What a beautiful gift. It's I don't know, Haggadah LeMoshe, it's pretty appropriate, Moshe.
Yeah.
That you got out of your own Mitzrayim. Your predecessor was the one who took our ancestors out.
True.
Very appropriate gift from your family.
Yeah.
You're speaking of books. You told me that your great-grandfather was a rabbi and that he authored 25 books. And when I asked you, you were telling me about your most recent book, which is at the publisher, Can There Be Forgiveness for the Holocaust? And I asked you what number book that was, and you said 17. And you had like a little, you had just mentioned that your great-grandfather wrote 25. So, when are the next 7 coming out? That's the last question. 8.
I hope God will give me life and also a budget for that.
When I just tell everybody that when I gave Moshe a bracha, not that, if anyone should be giving brachas, it's Moshe, but I said that you should be zocha to live and be well till 120, so you could write at least 25 books like your great-grandfather, and he said 120, at least 150, and I said 150, he says, yeah. What did you say back to me?
What? Yeah, that is inflation.
Sweet.
Since I was in Israel a soldier, that also gave me a lot of courage and a lot of love for the Jewish people, because I saw how beautiful our people are, that there is no other nation in the world that can do things as the Jewish people. We went through so much, but we were also able to create a great deal. So when I was in the army, which is Here is the picture.
Oh, I'd love to see that picture. I'm sorry.
Get it.
Anita, thank you. That would be very
Okay,
special.
whoops, 1 minute, I got it, I'll get it. What are wives for?
Oh, my God. Whoa. Well, now we know another reason why you married him. What a
Yeah.
handsome, look at that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's when I met him.
Oh, yeah.
He's still handsome.
Anita, why don't you come in? Please join us.
I'm coming in.
Now, have you heard
Already.
of a poet by the name of Yitzhak Katzenelson?
I've heard of him. I'm not up on his works, but of course, he's well known.
Yeah. So he wrote a poem, which is more than a poem. It's a long, long thing. He called it "The Song of the Murdered Jewish People," and he describes what the Jews are going through. But what I wanted to tell you is this: but he also says that we shouldn't give up. He wrote a play, and the title is Al Naharot Bavel, on the rivers of Babylonia, that an elderly man from the exile from Yehuda saw a young man who wanted to commit suicide, and he scolded him, and he told him the following, and he wrote this. It's unbelievable. I thought that would be very appropriate as far as Emunah.
Thank you.
I am old. The disaster befell me in my old age. I would prefer to close my eyes at once. And yet, I will not part with life lightly. Life, granted us by God, be it short or long, is not merely a gift. It is a command. Stay alive in joy or in sorrow. Stay alive in pleasure or pain. Stay alive in happiness, liberty, and equality. In slavery on alien soil, stay alive. In freedom in your own land. Humiliated in exile, stay alive, stay alive.
Wow.
Yeah, that's powerful. Powerful.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'd like to, if we can, to bring this to a close. I actually have a couple of candles here that I was going to light for the 6 candles representing the 6 million, and to recite a Kel Mole with your permission, Moshe, if that's okay. A special tefillah. I have the tefillah here, and then we'll conclude our program. I can't. Yeah, please.
Just wanted to conclude with a certain statement.
Please.
We say to the souls of our people murdered in Europe, Europe's darkest night, we will never forget you. We will not cease to mourn you. We will not let you down until the Jews can walk in the world without fear. We will be witnesses to the God of life, who told us, "Uvacharta b'chaim," choose life, against those who choose death. From the depth of destruction, we survivors brought forth a new spirit to rebuild our lives, to establish families, to raise a wonderful generation of children and grandchildren, the living bridge between our past and our future. We have enlisted in them pride of our heritage. They are links in the unbroken chain of the Jewish people. In conclusion, I would like to say two major events in our time drastically changed the course of Jewish history: the Holocaust, the destruction of European Jewry with its rich cultural and spiritual creations, and the second, the restoration of Jewish independence in the land of Israel and the ingathering of the exiles after 2,000 years. One cannot understand Jewish life today without a thorough knowledge of these two events. I was part of these two events. For the first one, I paid a heavy price. I lost 14 precious souls of my immediate family and 200 of my extended family. In the second one, I'm proud to have participated in the War of Independence as a member of the Haganah. When I was in the camps, people around me were dying all the time, and we prisoners were talking amongst us. We said that all of us will die and nobody will know what happened in the camps. If someone by chance or by God's grace will remain alive, he should tell the world what happened. I made an neder that if I stay alive, I will speak about it, I will write about it. Therefore, I made it my mission. I have written and published books about my experiences in the Holocaust. I give a thorough description of these events and lessons we should learn from the Shoah. I can tell you that the pain and the shock does not diminish. In Auschwitz and other concentration camps, the Germans had a slogan, Arbeit macht frei. We survivors say, Am Yisrael Chai.
Wow. Thank you. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something else.
I cannot think of a greater messenger, and thank you, Dr. Avital. Thank you, Moshe. Thank you, Anita, for you being such a walking Kiddush Hashem, a true sanctification of Hashem's name, of witness, and not only of the horrors, but of the beauty of Judaism, that you have dedicated your life to teaching and inspiring so many people. I really encourage everyone to get any one of Moshe's 17 books. Please go on his website, mosheavital.com. And it's a great time to do this over the next few days. We're going to light the candles in just a moment. And I want to continue to invite all of you to come back Facebook Live tomorrow and every day at 12:30, that I'll be teaching tomorrow more details about the Holocaust. I'll be teaching a class on the U.S. diplomatic response to Kristallnacht tomorrow at 12:30. And please remember that the more, and I started our program off with this message, that the more we embrace our Judaism, the more we become more knowledgeable and learned in what it means to be a Jew and follow in Moshe's ways, is the way that we will keep the memory of the 6 million alive by not simply remembering them, but living the lives that they so cherish. And as you can see from Moshe, how devoted he is to Torah and to mitzvot and to perpetuating the memory of the 6 million. Thank you, Moshe. You're just an incredible blessing. Thank you so much for opening your heart and sharing these painful memories with us. I know that this is not something you take lightly. We don't take it lightly. And I know you do it for only one reason, and that is to honor the memory of the 6 million and to express your own gratitude to God for his blessings in your life. May Hashem bless you and your amazing, amazing family. You should have continued nachas from your children and your grandchildren. With your permission, I'm going to light candles and we'll recite the Kelmoe. Ask everybody, as we just look at the candles, just take a moment to think about Moshe's family, his beloved brother Yosef, Zichrono Livracha, his parents, all of his siblings, his entire extended family, and the entire extended family of the Jewish people, 6 million holy souls who lost their lives and who will never be forgotten. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein B'Maramim. Amitzei Menucha Nechona al Kanfei Hashchina, V'Ma'alos Kedoshim Atorim, Kizor Rakia Mazirim, Es Nishmo Os HaKadoshim V'Hatorim, Shumsu V'Shenergu V'Nishnachatu V'Shnisrefu V'Shnitbeu V'Shnichneku Al Kiddush Hashem Al Yidei HaTzorim HaGermanim Yamach Shemam V'Zichram Va'avu Worship Li Neder Tzedakah B'Ad Hazkarat Nishmoteihem V'Gan Eden Tei Menuchatam Lachein Bal Rachamim Yastirim B'Seiter Kanafav L'Olamim V'Yitzor B'Tzor Chayim Es Nishmoseihem Adonai Hu Nachlatam V'Yanuchu B'Shalom Al Mishkavoteihem V'Nomar Amen.
Amen.
O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence and the lofty levels of the holy and the pure, who shine like the glow of the firmament for the souls of the holy and pure ones who were killed, murdered, strangled in the sanctification of your name through the hands of the German oppressors. May their name and memory be obliterated, because without making a vow, we will contribute to charity in remembrance of their souls. May their resting place be in the Garden of Eden. And therefore, may the Master of Mercy shelter them in the shelter of his wings for eternity. May he bind their souls in the bond of everlasting life. Adonai, God is their heritage, and may they repose in peace on the resting place. And let us all respond. Amen.
Amen. You have a way of getting into his soul.
Moshe has a...
He's brought out his neshama. You were amazing, I have to tell you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you. It is such an honor to know both of you. And I had the honor of meeting some of your children and not all of your grandchildren. But I look forward, B'ezrat Hashem, continuing our relationship. And on behalf of really everyone at MJE, Jill, my wife who's here, and Rabbi Ezra Cohn, and Rabbi Joshua Klein, and Tara, and
Wonderful group of people.
Rachel, and Maya, Chani, everyone. We have a whole staff, and literally the hundreds of people who are watching this, who you just moved to tears tonight, Moshe. May you continue to share your story, your extraordinary story of survival, and not simply survival, but your story of hope and of faith, of Emunah Hashem. You are true Yirei Hashem and Eved Hashem, and it is just an honor to know you, and I thank you both for participating. We thank everyone at MJE and everyone else who tuned in, and anyone who's listening to this after the fact. We thank you. Please take something from this. Be proud of who you are as a Jew, and continue to support the people in the state of Israel. I don't know how many people you will meet in your life who survived Auschwitz and fought in Milchemet HaShichrur, who saw the horrors of the concentration camps and fought to create the modern day state of Israel. Am Yisrael Chai. God bless both of you and your beautiful family. May you continue to thrive. Thank you both for participating and being with us. And may the Jewish people continue to live and to be strong. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you. Thank you. Yaldeni Sim, we love you. Yaldeni Sim. Okay.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for being so patient with me.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Moshe. Thank you, Anita. Dr. Avital, thank you so much. And you should continue to write. We're looking forward to more and more books, Mitzvah Hashem. We're looking forward.
Okay. I don't know whether I can handle it, but okay. So what do
All
we
right,
do
we're
now?
going to sign off. Thank you all, and thank you all for
Close it.
participating.
Just close it, right?
Okay. Yes.
Last, what to